Today, I'm going to show you how I lit the depths in Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom to turn it from this into this. Let's go. Okay, so by now we've all experienced the terrible lighting in the depths. Sure, there are light routes we can activate, but is that really the best we can do? Posty says nay. And if you're here, you may have also seen my video on lighting 𝗦𝗕𝗏 ruins in Breath of the Wild. See, in Breath of the Wild, the same address that controls weather and things like the Blood Moon or the Lost Woods Fog also controls the darkness in 𝗦𝗏𝗏 ruins. I figured the same would be true of the depths in Tears of the Kingdom, so that's where I began. I went to work and found the address that had the same type of weather controls in Tears of the Kingdom that I had found in Breath of the Wild. And although they were represented by different values than in Breath of the Wild, the effect was the same. I had things like the Lost Woods Fog and 𝗦𝗏𝗏 ruins darkness. Nice. Now it was time to test in the depths. It was all starting to seem a little too easy. As soon as I ventured into the depths, however, things took a turn. My weather controls seemed to have no effect at all. In effect, they were rendered completely useless. This was my first clue that the depths didn't play by the same rules as the surface. So my next thought was, okay, maybe there is a way to trick the game into thinking the depths is the surface. This would mean finding the value that signified the player is or is not in the depths. There must be some detection that deactivates normal weather controls and possibly other controls when I entered the depths. Working from that assumption, and the assumption that since this affects my ability to have weather, maybe the value would be near my weather in memory. I started studying the memory viewer when I entered and when I exited the depths to see what changed. I was looking for an on-off type of value, which is often represented by a 1 for on or a 0 for off. After watching for a bit, I came to a promising value, this 83F byte value. I know that these bytes represent a float value of 1. To be sure, I switched the memory view to display float values instead of regular byte values. After I knopped its instruction, which means to disable the line of code that writes to this address, I entered the depths and manually changed the value. Not only did I see a shift in the lighting, but I heard a familiar sound. That was the surface music. I think I'd found it. I could now trick the depths into thinking it was the surface and even generate weather. But it was still dark. Why? And then I thought, well, we are underground after all. It would make sense that there is no light. And then I thought, okay, in that case, there must be a light source already present in the depths I could exploit. And one glaring light source came to mind. The light route. So I spotted the light route in the distance and made my way over to it. But how do I even begin to find this light? Well, I tried a series of game saves where I activated the light route, then loaded into a game save where it was deactivated again. I did this several times, but always ended up with way too many addresses to be of use. That's when I noticed something I'd never noticed before. Because of the newly enabled weather controls in the depths, the shadow cast by the light route was really well defined now. As the dim light from the light route pulsed, the radius of the shadow expanded and contracted. These light sources seem to be the only thing that can overcome the darkness. That's when I changed the way I was thinking about this problem. What if the darkness is a type of layer mask the game uses and the lights affect its opacity? Similar to masking in Photoshop. So, in theory, if I could find the light source of the light route, or any object really, I might be able to exploit that and expand the light's radius beyond what it's normally capable of, effectively wiping out all of the darkness. Then the depths should be affected by lighting the same way the surface is. Let's try that. Now I just have to find it. I began by assuming that as the light's radius expanded, the value in memory grew, and as the light's radius shrank, the value in memory shrank as well. I started searching for an unknown float value and used increased or decreased accordingly. After several searches, I'd arrived at a set of addresses that all behaved as I expected. Next, I froze a random set of these values and watched to see how the light behaved. I started noticing some glitching, and that's promising. I began unfreezing addresses to see if my light source went back to normal. That brought me to this value. Now I just need to disable the instruction that writes to this address and see if the light stops pulsing. In other words, it stops expanding and contracting. And as soon as I knocked the instruction, the light stopped. Bingo! I think I found it. So now for the moment of truth. Now that its instruction isn't writing to this address anymore, I'll manually increase the value and see if the light grows. Dude, we found it! Next, we know we have many different light sources all around the map. Let's find an instruction that accesses all of them. Then every time it accesses my light source, we'll force a very high value and totally flood this map with light. Since we're disabling, aka knopping, all write instructions, we'll need to target a read instruction to turn it into a write instruction. I'll leave up the debugger window so you can see how the values are affected by our script. Don't worry, this is an easy one. In the memory viewer with our target instruction highlighted, we'll select Auto Assemble. This opens a new window where we'll write our script. Then under Templates, we'll select AOB Injection. This generates a script based on our instruction. This really does most of the work for us. We'll just need to tweak a very small piece of it. Now we'll just flip this read into a write, forcing in our own value. Then we just add it into our list and enable. And there you have it. As you can see, with the script enabled, every light source value is being forced to our own much higher value. While this tutorial is geared towards those who are at least semi-experienced, for those of you that prefer to bypass all of these steps I've shown in this video, I've also got the script available to my patrons over on patreon.com/postposterous. I hope you've enjoyed this video and maybe even learned something new. Thanks for watching. Posty loves you. Now all that's left is to explore.
Postposterous.
Postposterous.
Postposterous.